You're listening to Don't IEP Alone with special education advocate Lisa Lightner. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. Now back to the show with your host, Lisa.
Hello and good morning or good day, depending on when you are tuning in. Welcome to Don't IEP Alone. I'm Lisa Lightner, and I apologize again for being late with this episode. I had promised last fall that when I jumped back into this, that new episodes would come out on Tuesday, and I would probably run a rerun on Wednesday, and so far that has not been happening. And I don't want anybody to think that reruns aren't great, because first of all, the podcast, the content, a lot of it is evergreen. So I don't run any of the episodes about the pandemic and what to do if your child isn't receiving services during the pandemic and all that stuff. Just the things that are still timely or still relevant to IEPs. But anyway, as you know, I ran the podcast for many years, a couple of years, and then I paused it, and then I brought it back. And when I brought it back, I really had a commitment to doing it, and I was even paying a podcast manager overseas, and all these other things, but that stuff gets expensive. I have to pay to host the things online and all this other stuff, and so that's why I took a step back a few months ago and said, well, wait a minute, I can't keep spending all this money month after month. And not only is it spending money for, to create a podcast, I don't have any advertisers. I don't have a big production team like some of the big famous, podcasters. And my podcast doesn't make any money. So in addition to the time and money that I'm spending doing it, I lose money because that's time that I could have spent with a one-on-one client. So if I set aside half a day to create and publish episodes, again, that's half a day that I'm not seeing paying clients. So anyway, I brought it back again for a third time's a charm, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to keep it this little simple podcast. We're not doing editing. It is what it is. What I say is what you get, because I don't know how to edit a podcast. But anyway, I've been trying to cut back on the services that I use, and so the past couple of weeks, whenever I recorded it, I could not get the recording to upload to the platform. And so I gave up and had to re-record, hence the other delay. So maybe I really am an internet idiot, even though I'm constantly saying I'm not an internet idiot. I know how to work these things. My teenager gets frustrated with me, and I tell him, look, we didn't have, I didn't even have a cell phone I didn't have a smartphone until after both kids were born. I didn't even have a cell phone until after I was married. And we had computers in high school, but it was one class. It was just like intro to computers or something, and all you did was this basic coding, and that consisted of making either a heart or a smiley face with X's and O's and printing it on a dot matrix printer. That really was the extent of it. And then when I was in college, we had computers, but it was a computer lab. Nobody had their own computer. And you went to a computer lab, and again, we're still talking about like dot matrix printers and floppy disks and Print Shop, if you remember Print Shop, and things like that. So anything that I've learned has been self-taught or through online resources, reading, webinars, tutorials. So given all that, I can't complain, or shouldn't complain. I learned it all myself. So anyway, what I had recorded last week, and it didn't get published, was a lot of chit chat about my son and our journey through his diagnosis and him having autism and things like that. And if you hadn't noticed recently on social media with my reels and with my posts, I am being a lot more outspoken, and it might seem or feel like I'm doing a complete 180 in my position. And I wanted to kind of explain my journey. Not that I feel the need to explain myself, because I'm kind of in this let them phase of my life where if people want to think something about me, I'm going to let them. On the other hand, people do come to me for IEP advice and things like that, and I feel like I do have an obligation to share my journey in hopes that it might help someone else or give just a different perspective. So, as many of you know, I do have a disabled child myself. We did receive his chromosome disorder diagnosis when he was an infant. And with this diagnosis, we knew that he would likely develop autism, and he did. And so I started to, educate myself as best I could on autism and all these different things that are out there. And I also just want to point out that this was actually pre-social media, if you can believe that. It seems like pre-Facebook is eons ago, but it's not that long ago, 15, 20 years. But I actually didn't join Facebook until Kevin was, I want to say 3.5 years old. And I didn't start my blog and my page on Facebook, which now has, 150-ish thousand followers. And I'm not saying that to brag, it's just a vanity number. But that is kind of part of the reason why I feel the need to explain myself because of what I post, because I do have a lot of reach. But I didn't start that page. I think he was 5.5 when that started. So, that wasn't necessarily influencing me and how I felt about autism at the time. Everything that I was learning was through parent message boards, listservs, waiting rooms at therapies and programs and things like that. And so as my page got larger and had more activity on it, there certainly was, more discussion. And then, of course, there was this discussion of, well, we need to listen to autistic people. And I was like, yes. Oh my gosh, yes, we need to listen to autistic people. Why are we not listening to autistic people? Of course. And, again, I'm on this journey trying to figure out all this stuff with my little guy. And when, then it was the functioning labels, right? Well, you shouldn't say high functioning and low functioning, which to be fair, I've always been against the high functioning label, just because as an advocate, I've learned that those who are typically given that label, that high functioning often only indicates high verbal ability, and other than communicating, that these kids were really struggling a lot behind the scenes. And then others say, well, high functioning just means they can mask better. But some truly don't need to mask that much. It's a spectrum. But anyway, so then we got into this whole high functioning and low functioning. Don't use that term. How dare you, you should never call someone low functioning. Then that's a terrible term to use. And imagine that's how someone described you. And I was like, oh, okay. Listening. Okay. Won't call my son that. Right? Higher support needs. That's what we're supposed to say. He's higher support needs. Well, okay. If that's what term you want me to use, I'll use it. So that was the first one. And then it was, no, don't call him nonverbal. You don't call people nonverbal. It's non-speaking. Oh.
We'll be back after a quick break.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a truth bomb. The IEP process never gets easier. You get better. If you do not learn the IEP process and how to use it to your advantage, your child will get left behind. That's exactly why I created the Don't IEP Alone series of advocacy courses for parents. Join us and gain the knowledge, skills, and support you need to navigate the complex world of special education and IEPs. Visit adayinourshoes.org for more information. Okay. Won't do that. Won't call him nonverbal. He's not low functioning. He's not nonverbal. He's higher support needs and non-speaking. Won't do that. So I listened. Then it started to go to a weird place where it was all ABA is child abuse. Can't ever do ABA. Okay. Now, let me just say a couple of things. First of all, do I believe that some kids were mistreated under the guise of ABA? Absolutely. I'm sure that happened. But people who are going to mistreat kids are going to mistreat kids. It's just, I think happens that those particular people used ABA. My child is in an all ABA school. I am not afraid to say that. And he has made a tremendous amount of progress over the years. So now when I say that, I get, you're abusing your child, and just wait till he can speak up and speak out against you, and he's going to hate you, and all this crazy stuff. So meanwhile, I was sitting silent about the ABA, but for a lot of it, I was berating people the way, I was told, and I want to apologize for being such a jerk. I deserve it. And sometimes when I think back over the past, 5 or 10 years or whatever it was, I just want to kind of punch my own self in the face. But that's what I was doing, is I was parroting what I heard because these folks said, I'm autistic. You need to listen to autistic people. But then it got to a different place where one of the narratives that was taking place was, if you don't have autism, take a seat, because only autistic people can speak about autism, and you are not able to speak about a condition that you do not have. Which I just kind of sat with that for a long time, because I kept thinking, but he doesn't talk, right? So I can't speak about autism for my son, but he doesn't talk. And if you're of the ability to get an email address, of course, which you need to get a social media account, and then get a social media account, and then speak up and speak out against these issues, and berate others on social media about this, you're not at all like my child, right? My child cannot read, write, or talk. He has a very limited skill set, and you know what? I'll say it. He's low functioning. He has very few skills, despite years of teaching and all that. And it's not, I want to say also, it's not just the autism that are his issues. He's intellectually disabled, and he's has epilepsy. So then it also got into this space of, the social model of disability, and that it's not the disabled person's fault that they're disabled, which I don't think anyone ever said it was, but that we don't need to really fix the disabled people, that what we need to do is fix society and make society more accessible to disabled people, and not this medical model of disability where people need medical treatment and things like that. And that autism is just a difference, right? It's just a different way of thinking, and this whole neurodivergence and different thinkers and all this other things. So I'm sitting with this information, And it's not sitting well with me because I'm thinking this is not just a different way of thinking for my child. I can see the pained look on his face when he wants to do something or he wants to enjoy something, and his autism is, and his sensory seeking behavior is just getting in the way of something that he wants to do and enjoy. And I'm thinking back over the years of all the times that my son's sensory seeking behavior has led him into unsafe situations because he's unable to make good decisions and safe decisions when it comes to sensory seeking behavior. And this certainly holds true for young kids, well, all kids with autism, and this dramatic rise that we're having lately with drowning, right? Because they want to see and touch, and water, the draw of water is just so powerful, and we have kids, autistic kids, drowning so frequently. Number one cause of accidental death for autistic children is drowning. Okay, so I'm thinking about that. So I'm like, that's not just a neurological difference. It's not just a different way of thinking when you're absolutely unable to keep yourself safe, and that you're not able to make the decision to not enter a freezing pond of water, right? That is not just a different way of thinking, and, it's not a disorder, it's just a difference. That's bullshit. I could go on and on with the other things that I've been told to say or not say. Autism is not a disability. Well, yeah, it is. And so here's my point, is that I do have a voice, and I am my child's voice. He does not have a voice. And it appears that you all are not speaking for him. You're not really even speaking for yourselves. It's what I'm seeing. And again, this isn't all autistic adults. This isn't the entire autism self-advocacy movement. It's just and I don't know the exact numbers, it's just a very vocal group, and they're online bullies, and they shout anyone down who dares to disagree with them. And then they go in their little private groups, where they validate each other, and they share my posts, so they can all nod in agreement at what a terrible person I am. Let them. I don't care. But it's performative advocacy because they're not really doing anything besides yelling at people on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and sending nasty DMs to people like me and comments. They all have, I noticed, because I've been posting some videos the past several weeks, and I've been going through and looking at the comments, and the ones telling me that I'm a terrible mother, that I hate my kid, that I'm abusing my kid, all these different things. If you look at their profiles, many of them only have 8 or 10 friends. So I don't know if these are burner accounts or troll accounts or what. But a lot of them, don't even have a dozen friends. And everyone kind of has this look, this early to mid-20s look with colored hair, the infinity symbol, and all that. So again, I don't even know if these are real people. They certainly give off a vibe that these are troll or burner accounts. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But you cannot change the definition of autism because it doesn't suit you. This is what I don't understand, is why some of these folks are so desperate to get this label that they will give it to themselves, right? Based on a TikTok video. Oh yeah, I'm autistic now too. Got a touch of the tism, don't you know? That they're so desperate to, like, oh, I'm awkward and I don't like loud noises and I don't like bright lights and I like to code, so therefore I'm autistic. The DSM-5 takes masking into consideration. I do believe, of course, there's going to be people who are going to fall through the cracks and for whom an autism diagnosis would be appropriate and they don't get one. But I don't think that this is happening in the numbers that we're seeing on social media. I don't believe that it's that many people falling through the cracks. I think it's kids who are awkward socially, kids who have grown up on social media, so they didn't learn how to interact with people appropriately. who knows what. And then everybody's clinging to this label of autism and then trying to redefine it. And that is, confusing at best. This is affecting parents' ability to not only advocate for their children, but to support their kids and support themselves, right? Because these advocates, they preach about acceptance and autism pride and blah, 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 but their actions just scream gatekeeping, right? Like, no, autism is this, and if you say anything different, then you can't be in this club. And they'll jump into a comment section and berate everybody for saying that their kid is severely autistic or ABA, or, you're ableist and you want to cure your kids. And so when that happens, there's no genuine conversation. Maybe that's the point, right? It seems like everyone on TikTok thinks they're an autism expert, right? You see a quick video about stimming or sensory sensitivities. Oh, yeah, that's me. Late diagnosed adults, they absolutely deserve recognition and support. But there's a fine line between genuinely identifying autistic traits as an adult and self-diagnosing because it's trendy. And that's what's happening, right? Autism isn't just a quirky personality trait. It's a neurological difference that impacts every aspect of a person's life, and sometimes it's profound and challenging and severe. And these narratives that are taking place today, they're diluting the real struggles that many families like mine face, right? I don't need you to oversimplify my experience with the hashtag, because you're not here. You're not here day to day with an adult man who needs 24/7, 365 supervision, or he literally would put himself into life-threatening situations. That is not just a neurological difference. And when I say what I want to say about severe autism, and I get shouted down with "no human is severe," and then it's "let's stop the infighting." So what you're saying is that you don't want anyone to challenge your opinion. And I let you challenge my opinions for years, and I listened, and I parroted what you said. I used my platform to amplify autistic voices. I hosted articles on my site. I hosted podcast episodes. Right? I let you challenge my perceptions. And when I say, this doesn't feel right for me, or this is actually a very descriptive term. Because the other thing is, like, autism is not a bad word, right? Because you used people first language, right? You're only allowed to use identity first language, which I use both. I don't even really think much about it. It's, I guess, just whatever comes out of my head. But I use both. And you shouldn't use people first language. Autism and disability is not a bad word. You can say disabled person. Well, okay. If disability isn't a bad word, why is severe a bad word? Why is low functioning a bad word? If your argument is that a word is only bad if you attach that energy to it, for my child, severe and low functioning is actually very descriptive. And I've been in rooms with clinicians and service providers and agencies and case managers. And when you tell them higher support needs, you get, like, it's just not descriptive enough. It's just not descriptive enough. It's too clunky. We just don't need new terms. We just don't. Stop fighting over shit that doesn't matter. Because that's what this is. It's performative advocacy. What are you actually doing to increase funding and to increase programming? Autism is not a lifestyle choice. It's not. You're born with it, right? You don't get to choose to be autistic. And we're doing it, and we're doing autistic people an incredible disservice when we're oversimplifying this, diluting it, treating it like a trend. I'm really anxious to see what happens now with this TikTok ban, which I don't even think is going to be a TikTok ban, but all these quizzes of, you might be autistic if you do this. And some of it's just this basic shit that like everybody does. Like, I don't know anyone that likes to be in a noisy environment for an extended period of time. Like, literally no one. But, oh, I don't like loud noises, therefore I'm autistic. We all have sensory aversions. We all do. We all feel awkward at times socially, some more than others. Not every socially awkward person with sensory aversions is autistic. Anyway, I've rambled enough for today, but that's where I've been and that's where I'm headed in 2025. I'm not sitting silent on this anymore because my son is losing, and others like him are losing funding. They're losing programming options as adults, and on and on and on, because of this diluting of the diagnosis. And, you know, go back and listen to the episode with Amy Lutz and this whole search for the intact mind, right? Like, if only I could get to my son, if only I could connect with him, there's an intact mind in there. Well, what if there isn't? Like, why does that never occur to these people? Because that's the real ableist concept here, is that who you are right now is not good enough. You must be something more. You must be something different. We just haven't learned how to reach you yet. What if, as Jack Nicholson said, this is as good as it gets? Why is that not good enough for you? Something to think about.
Thank you for listening to Don't IEP Alone with special education advocate Lisa Lightner. We're so glad you've joined us and would love to connect with you outside of the show. For more information about Lisa, the IEP Toolkit, and more ways we can help you in your process, go to adayinourshoes.com. From self-care tips to common IEP mistakes, there's even more to explore. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast and subscribe to never miss an episode. Until next time, don't IEP alone. And you don't have to.